Welcome to Make and Decorate, a podcast for makers who love to sew, quilt, and decorate. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Make and Decorate podcast with Stephanie. I'm your host, Stephanie, and this is Season 4, Episode 85. In this episode, I am reviewing different brands of hand embroidery threads and styles of embroidery threads. And all of these threads I have used and tested. But first, I have a few formalities. I've got a private Mighty Networks group called Make and Decorate Friends. A lot of you have joined already. Thank you so much. And the link is in the show notes, or you can just search Make and Decorate Friends in the Mighty Networks website. If you love the show and you would like to support the podcast, consider becoming a patron on my Patreon page, Make and Decorate. You will receive a bonus podcast every month. Finally, be sure to subscribe to the Make and Decorate podcast so you do not miss an episode, because all of you support the podcast just by listening each and every episode. I'm truly grateful for all of you, and this season 4 has been great, and it's almost coming to an end. The last episode will be running towards the end of May, and then I'll be on a break until season 5 resumes, and probably around mid-September, early October timeframe. For those of you new to the podcast, I start out with the chit chat segment, and the second segment is the main topic of the episode, which is either a conversation I have with a guest or my own presentation of the main topic at hand, which today is review on embroidery threads. If you prefer only the main topics or guest interviews, fast forward about 20-25 minutes in to get to that segment. Otherwise, enjoy my chit chat on sewing and crafty projects. I do talk about the weather, gardening, podcast, and streaming recommendations. Today, I've got quite a few of what I'm watching recommendations or reviews. All right, so let's get started. Chit chat. Here we go. All right, well, we might as well start with the weather. Spring is really being timid on really like getting in here strong, and winter has just elbowed its way back in. Yesterday we had snow. Yeah, mid-April snow. It's cold again. We all had to switch back to our winter coats. And it's supposed to be back. It's supposed to be not back, but it's supposed to get up to 70 on the weekend. We shall see. But this back and forth is kind of annoying because the trees are blooming and there are just beautiful magnolia blooms and flowers everywhere. The forsythia, yellow flowers on the bushes. My daffodils have come up, and this snow just wilted a lot of it. Oh, it's just heartbreaking. However, the daffodils are pretty hardy. So some of them are kind of like hanging in there, and some of them haven't even bloomed yet. But yeah, that's kind of like a really mean thing for winter to do in April. All right, let's start also with a garden update. My seedlings are doing well, except I'm making all of those rookie mistakes. I'm trying not to panic, and I'm just kind of correcting as I go. I left the humidity domes on a little too long, and they are starting to get a little leggy, the seedlings, and I haven't thinned out some of them where, like, for instance, the chamomile seeds, they're really tiny, and I just like sprinkled a bunch on the seed starting tray. And there's a bunch of them up. So I was hoping that they would grow a little larger, and then I could kind of like break them into separate plants. I'm not so sure, but I am going to do that with some of them because I already did it with the cucumber vines, and I was able to save all of those seedlings. There weren't that many because the seeds are larger, so it's easier to control how many you put into the soil. Next task is to do some of the transplanting. And I got a new LED plant light. It has 3 adjustable arms, and it has a clip or a clamp, and I just clipped it to the windowsill behind the seedling tray, and it has the blue and red light setting, which is apparently what the sun has. It has the red and blue colors that promote they promote different things. The red and the blue, one is better for vegetables and the other is good for blooms. I don't understand all the science to it, but that's what it is, and that's what I got. It's working pretty well, almost too well, because the seedlings are growing too fast for me to keep up with going on to the next step. We also got a raised bed from Costco with casters for our deck. And this will be for the lettuces, spinach, and arugula seeds that I got. And as always, I did a ton of research on this. If you're thinking of getting a raised bed for your patio or deck, here are some of the things that I was particularly looking for. One of it was wood, and the type of wood. I really love cedar, and cedar is one of the best water-resistant, rot-resistant woods out there. It's also more expensive, though. There's another wood, fir, and it's also rot-resistant. And aesthetically, these woods look really nice. Another thing is self-watering. This raised planter that I got has a self-watering feature. There's a raised plastic base at the bottom with lots of holes that allows the water to be absorbed up into the soil and the roots of the plants. I really like that. And a plus to this is that it has a tube that comes up out of the planter, and it has a cute flower bob type thing. It's shaped in a flower, and it bobs up and down based on the amount of water that has been put into the planter. And you also water the planter through in this tube. So you just kind of hold the watering can or the hose and pour the water directly into that spout. And then the water level indicator, which is this flower bob, will rise up. And I like that because it's a nice indication of how much water is in there. And what else? The raised height is really nice. There's no breaking your back and bending, and it's easy to tend to. Keeps the pets away and other animals like rabbits away from ear lettuce plants. And then another plus on this particular one we got were casters. So it can be easily moved around if we choose to. And even in putting it away for the season, casters are really nice for that. Things to be aware of are thin, cheap, imported wood or pine. Read the reviews. I read a lot of reviews, and they are very helpful. And people are posting more and more photos. I love that because they will show the condition of the wood when they've received it. They'll show the cracks and so forth. So the reviews are really good to take a look at. And then there's other options. There was a really pretty like faux wicker raised bed, and I thought that one was nice too. But I really liked the cedar wood one, or the pine wood. I think the one we have is not cedar, but it's Canadian fir. It's thick wood. It's beautiful. It has like steel legs, which gives it a contemporary twist to a more traditional rustic design. I like that transitional. It's got clean lines, but yet it's still warm with the wood. There are all metal raised planters. There's galvanized metal. and there's some that are very contemporary looking modern. So if that's your style, that's available out there as well. All right, moving into sewing. I got my Tana lawn fabric for my wedding outfit. I love it. It's really so beautiful. And then I ordered a little bit more, but I had to wait. You guys should have seen me. I was checking back almost daily because it went right back up to the regular price. And there was a very limited amount of that fabric left. So I was like, oh boy, what am I going to do? Because I don't want to lose this fabric, but the yardage amounts I need to order, regular price is just, out of the range. I kept checking back and voila, it went back on sale. So as soon as I saw that, I'm like, 3.5 more yards. Click, send. So thank goodness it was meant to be. I'm very glad. I am thinking of making a tank top that will layer under the cardigan sweater, that cashmerette, and I don't know why I always forget the name of it, but you know what I'm talking about. The cashmerette cardigan and the short version. So I've got options now, and I also got the sweater fabric. It's a ribbed sweater knit, and it's in that deeper plummy color, but it's kind of variegated very slightly. I like it because it doesn't look like a flat color, a flat dark color. It's got little flecks of the lighter shades of the plum color, and so hopefully I don't mess it up. I am going to make some muslins. I'm just gonna make a skirt and out of less expensive fabric, and if it goes well, I'm gonna wear it. And if it doesn't go well, I'll adjust it so that it can be wearable, hopefully. And then I will make notes and pattern changes from making that one. It's not the right way, but it's the way I'm gonna do it. Yeah, until I get better at it. I don't know. It's the only. I don't know. I just don't. I want my time to be productive into something that can be worn. Basically, that's my thought process there. Which is a long-winded way to say I don't want to make a muslin out of actual muslin fabric that you don't wear. It's that real thin, kind of natural looking cotton that's used a lot to make the traditional muslin practices before the real deal. The fabric I got for my muslin is a pretty nice fabric. It's a lawn fabric. So I am also getting a fabric where the fiber and the weight of the fabric is similar, if not the same as Tana lawn. So it's a lawn fabric. It's Kaufman lawn fabric. And it's really beautiful. It's a cotton lawn fabric, and it's got a painterly stroke design on the fabric that looks like to me it looks like impressionist flower petals or just little paint strokes in a nice color palette where there's yellows, pinks, and periwinkle, which I attained another goal that I wanted to do this year, which is to make something to wear out of the Pantone Color of the Year, Very Peri, or periwinkle. I am going to make a shirt to go with this muslin waddle curve skirt, and I'm going to make the dolman top out of a knit fabric with the little tie feature in the front. There's 2 different styles that you can make from that cashmerette pattern. It's also Kaufman knit fabric, and it's a periwinkle color. The color name that they gave it is cornflower. And what's really nice with the Kaufman fabrics is that their color palettes work with each other, so you can make a complete outfit if you want to. So this cotton lawn fabric palette has the periwinkle in it, and so they also had the knit with that periwinkle. It was great. Done. I love it. So that is what I'm going to start with to make a muslin, even though I'm not going to wear the dolman to the wedding. It's just something that I can, have a full outfit to wear for summer. I'm looking forward to getting back to sewing clothes for myself. When I began quilting several years ago, I pushed clothing sewing to the back burner. I made clothes for my nieces and nephews, my husband, and because there was just a really limited style and number of patterns out there in my size range. The patterns that were out there were just shapeless and matronly. And I'm talking about the big four sewing books. And it was just, none of it appealed to me. And I am so happy when Jenny Rushmore launched Cashmerette, her pattern business. She was pretty much one of the first ones. I don't know if she is the first one, but she's one of the first that designed patterns for curvier and more plus-sized fitting. And her options, actually, so what she kind of started just really paved the way, and now there are so many pattern companies out there that either have added extended sizes to their existing collections, and others who that's the market that they make patterns for. But really, I think that now it's starting to become standard where a lot of these independent pattern companies just offer the full range, and they will just kind of divide it, like Megan Nielsen has the 0 to 20 pattern, and she'll just have a different set of patterns for what she calls the curve. So like for instance, the wattle skirt regular is for 0 to 20. The wattle curve skirt is the 12 through whatever, 32 or whatever, which is nice. Yeah, so these patterns are so much better now. They're beautiful, and they've got princess seams. They play on the hemlines, play with the fullness and shape and contemporary flattering styles. So I think it's going to be a lot more fun for me to sew some of my own clothes. And Cashmerette, okay, they recently launched a subscription club where they release a free pattern every month to members. And I have been eyeing it since January, kind of keeping tabs on the newsletters and the postings of pictures that people were making from, the pattern of the month. I think the first month was this cute bomber jacket. And because I really wasn't sure if I wanted to do it or not. But the nice thing is that you can join and cancel anytime. And it's so you could just like try it out. And if you don't like it, then you just cancel and you don't continue. They have 3 different levels, so I did the middle one. I was I was on the fence between, because the first level, just you just get the pattern, and the second level you get the pattern plus there's a video, a tutorial video every month, and I think there's also a monthly webinar Zoom type of a thing. But you only start with getting the pattern the month that you joined going forward. So then they have a third level, which is, these prices go up incrementally. The third level is an all access. When you join at that level, you will get all of the patterns in the library that has been released up to that point. And that's the only real difference going forward. I didn't do that one. I was on the fence of that, but I looked at, first of all, it's only just started, so there probably are 3 patterns I'm missing. And I don't see the need right now to do that, to get those, because I'm not going to make them anytime soon. However, also another reason is that I really just wanted to try it out. I will do a proper review of it when I have fully tested it out, but I can say on day 1, I watched the tutorial of the month, and it that alone was already worth the price of admission for me. But I'm going to continue to note my experience of the subscription and present it to you in a future episode of the podcast. In addition, if you have comments or questions, you can leave me a voicemail on my podcast page at makeanddecorate.com. You can DM me on Instagram or email info@makeanddecorate.com. So if you have questions and you want me to cover a specific topic of this subscription that I'm reviewing, then let me know. The only quilt I am working on right now is the commissioned king-size Irish chain quilt. This pattern has you pre-cut all of the pieces before sewing, and it takes forever, ever and ever and ever, it feels like, except for some pieced with the fabric strips that you stitch together. But then after those are stitched together, you subcut those into little 2.5 by 4.5 inch pieces. And so I'm finally done with that part of the quilt, like the main design, and now I have to cut out all of the background fabric pieces. Those I looked at, and a lot of them are subcut from 4.5 inch wide strips. I decided to get the 4.5 inch die from AccuQuilt so that I could at least do those first cuts on the die cutter machine. It really does speed up the process. When I was able to do the 2.5 inch strips from the die cut machine, it really took no time. It's just that when the die cut is only good for certain sizes, and those are usually the more popular sizes. So whenever you have to do all of these odd size cuts, then you're back to doing them with your rotary cutter and the mat, or maybe with that strip cutting template. I use it all. I try to be as accurate and efficient as possible. All right, then I'm also in the first month of the Quilt Folks 2022 block of the month. April is month 1, and I have been working on that block during the evenings. Of course, I make this more time-consuming than it needs to be. However, I'm enjoying it because, first of all, there's no rush, and I can take the full month to make one block. And the point of, I think, this block of the month is to be more uninhibited and free and artistic. Kind of get your mind outside of the box. It's a lot of improvisational design that you're doing. Every person that is participating in this is making their own version of a book cover design. I'll tell you, the design that I'm making is a childhood book that it's a series actually, but it's a book that I loved so much, Ramona and Beezus by Beverly Cleary. I think I read those books over and over. They were just so much fun, and me being the older sister could totally relate. And that is a book cover I'm doing. There are different styles of these book covers, so I'm actually doing the blue and yellow version of this book cover. It's a lot of fun. I'm really having some fun with it. Um, and it's weird. It I was realizing that I have been really into hand embroidery now. And that's a technique that I'm doing in this first block. I'm doing some applique and hand embroidery. And hand embroidery has replaced my evening winter knitting. I used to do the knitting in the evenings, and now I'm doing a lot more hand embroidery. And it's really funny how certain things have their season with me. And this is why I would find it difficult to focus solely on one creative discipline. I mean, this just for this reason. I kind of seasonally switch out. I love learning new things. That's why this gardening and starting seeds indoor is exciting because it's brand new and it just feels good to be learning a new craft. All right, so we're at this segment. I think I'm naming it Watch and Listen. What I'm watching and listening to. So let's start with Netflix. There's a new show out called Anatomy of a Scandal. I think it's a British show. Netflix now has originals shows made for them from lots of different countries. And this one has Michelle Dockery from Downton Abbey, Orlando Bloom, the woman from, I don't know her real name, but she is from All Creatures Great and Small. She is the I don't even know. She kind of like is in charge of the house that the main characters live in All Creatures Great and Small. So she's in this. It's really cool. I recognized her right away, but I couldn't place her for about a couple minutes, and then I was like, All Creatures Great and Small. I don't know. It's the kind of thing that you just do. Like the thought comes into your head and you just blurt it out. That's what I do. On Apple TV Plus. Oh, wait a second. Oh my gosh. I'm so bad at this. Okay, back up. So she's from All Creatures Great and Small. And Sienna Miller is one of the main characters in this show as well. It is set in London. The main character, Orlando Bloom, is a politician who is caught in a scandal, and he's backed by the prime minister. The prime minister sends his lawyer to him. The PR and everything. I mean, of course, they're just, trying to spin this so that he comes out unscathed. And Sienna Miller plays his wife. They have a few school-age children, and her character deals with it more as a professional in the field of politics than an actual wife would. She's very forgiving and very ready to support him. I've only watched a couple of episodes. It's pretty good so far. And at first you don't really know what to make of him, and is he really sorry or is he not, or it's just there's a lot of different characters with different motives, and it's very interesting. So that is called Anatomy of a Scandal. The second one I believe I mentioned before, Pachinko. It is on Apple TV Plus, and I still think it is an amazing show. I'm learning about the deeper history of Korean and Japanese culture and their relationships with each other before the wars. I think that Japan kind of invaded and took over Korea around the 1910s, 20s, something like that. And yeah, it's interesting. It's very interesting to see kind of the background and culture of my heritage. I didn't even realize. I knew that based on history, Japan had taken over Korea, but I really didn't know anything in detail like this show is portraying. And it's just so well done, and it goes back and forth. This family that starts during that time of the Japanese takeover, and then to the mid or late 80s in America, where a great grandson of that lineage comes back to Japan, Tokyo, and it's just a really full story with great characters. It's beautiful cinematography, and if you like to read the subtitles, because I think it might be dubbed in English. I'm not sure. Yeah, I think it is. But we choose to just have it and done in its original language and reread the subtitles. And it's done in Japanese and Korean languages. So the blue text is Japanese and the yellow text is Korean. It's just a really good show. I think it's probably going to be coming to the end of the season soon. All right, and then there's another. I think this is pretty newish. This streaming service. It's called Topic, and it has a lot of foreign shows, like Danish and Swedish and I mean, like shows from all over the world. There's some American shows in there too, but I love Scandinavian TV shows. I don't know. It started with it started with the girl with the oh my gosh, the girl with the dragon tattoo, which was made from a book by Stieg Larsson, and that has since been remade into an American version movie or TV. I don't remember if it's a movie or TV show, but this is the original is the Danish show. And I also love crime thriller shows, detectives, things that you try to figure out as the show reveals it or doesn't reveal it. And I think that the Danish, Swedish shows do this so well as the UK detective shows. They just, I don't know how they write such complex characters and twists in the plot, but they do it. There's a total of 4 seasons, and then the series ended. So I watched all 4 of the seasons. It's one of the best crime detective shows I've ever seen. The main character's name is Saga. She's in Sweden, and the whole premise of The Bridge, is the bridge that meets the center of the bridge is one side is Denmark and the other side is Sweden. And the first season starts off with a crime where the person who was killed is halfway. There's a yellow line, and she's halfway on the Sweden side and half on the Danish side. So those two police groups have to work together to solve the crime. And so Saga is the Swedish police person, and she works with the Danish police detective Martin. You'll recognize that character if you watch Killing Eve. He is one of the characters on that show. But her Saga's character is completely. She has no social skills, and it's almost like she's on the spectrum of autism, like Asperger's. I read a couple of reviews that said that she has Asperger syndrome, where she doesn't get jokes, and she really just tells it like it is all the time, not really realizing that she might be hurting someone's feelings or saying too much, TMI, that sort of thing. But it's good. The actress who plays her is brilliant. She is so good. So anyway, if you like this type of show, you will love this. The plot twists alone will keep your interest from beginning to end. HBO Max we are watching Tokyo Vice. It's probably on its fourth episode by now, I think. And this one is set in the 90s in Tokyo. There's a young American journalist from Missouri, and he uh, is working for the biggest newspaper in Japan, or media outlet, whatever it really is. I don't remember if it's a newspaper or just the media, but no, it's newspaper because he writes articles. He speaks fluent Japanese, and he's pretty confident, but he's young. And so he's a rookie at this. But he learns, and we also learn about the relationships between the press, the police, and the Yakuza in Japan. It's very interesting. It might be too much for some people, but it's also really well done. On PBS, there is a show that's been going on, airing there before. It's called Before We Die. This is another crime thriller. I guess that's the theme of my recommendations this week are crime thrillers. This one is a UK show, and there's a detective, Hannah. You will recognize this character too if you watch any amount of BBC shows like I do. You'll recognize her right away. Well, she is a detective trying to solve the murder of her colleague, and he was also her boyfriend. She uses his confidential informant, and the surprise is when she finds out who this informant is. And that's all I'm going to tell you because I do not want to spoil it. It is a really great show. Very, very good. Before We Die on PBS. Moving along to YouTube, I looked up that YouTube channel that I couldn't remember last episode of the British gardener that I really like and started watching recently. It's called Grow Veg, and it's all one word, Grow, V-E-G, Grow Veg. I love his channel. I've watched more videos, and he has the cutest dog who follows him around and is all curious about what he's planting and what he's doing. Oh, the dog is so cute. And I love his greenhouse. I mentioned that on the last episode too. I die for that greenhouse. I love the wood frame, and I love the style of it, and the glass up in the ceiling, and the windows on the side halfway down. Oh, it's heavenly. I really love it. Another gardening channel that I've been watching for probably 2 years now is Epic Gardening. This guy is out of California, I believe. And he gives really easy tips on seed growing and container gardening. He does a very good job at showing how to do things in the simplest of ways. He is who I watched and for starting seeds indoors. And I learned a lot from him, and he just made the process so much easier than I thought it was going to be. So that's called Epic Gardening. And the third gardening channel I have been watching for years, not because I wanted some gardening, info of things that I was going to do, kind of, sort of, but mostly just to drool over her gardens. The people who run this channel, Garden Ants, are a husband and wife team. Laura, she's the one always on the camera, and I believe her husband films the episodes. And she grew up, so they're actually in Oregon. It's see, this is confusing because when they start putting towns of other places into I don't know. So it's Ontario, Oregon, not Ontario, Canada, and not Ontario, California. Why do they call things Ontario in so many places in North America? I don't know. But anyway, Yeah, so Oregon. And they have acquired so much property over the years. She grew up and her parents had a seed and garden center called Andrew's Seed. Uh, sorry, Andrew's Seed and Garden Center. So I think they still do that. They talk a lot about like this, they've ordered this or whatever for the garden centers. So I'm pretty sure it's still a family business that they are also helping to run. But her channel is focused on her gardens at home, and she does anything from growing tomatoes to containers to flower beds. It's everything, and everything is just so beautiful. Irrigation systems, everything is like beautifully irrigated, and it's just when. When I first started watching up until recently, I always just thought, oh, that's so nice. It's so nice to be able to do that. And, you know, they have they have access to the plants because they're in the business, and I'm sure they have a lot of help. So of course you could have gardens that absolutely gorgeous and beautiful. And honestly, there's no way that you could maintain as many gardens as she has just by herself. I don't, there's no way. So, anyway, she has people, I'm sure of it. Yeah, I have to keep reminding myself of that because when you start comparing what you can get done versus what you see in front of you in a beautiful video that looks like perfection and just glorious, glorious gardens, that's what you have to, well, that's what I have to remember is that, over here with me, it's just a little tiny property and it's like me, myself, and maybe my husband sometimes with the gardening. So you can only get done what you can get done. However, again, her gardens are beautiful. I love watching them. She has a very good presentation style. She does tutorials and shows you how to plant things. And then she doesn't even know everything, and she even tries to plant things, and sometimes they're put in the wrong spot and they either get too much light or not enough light. So it's interesting to see how she reveals some of her mistakes, but she does trial and error, and I think that's a lot of what I do too, just to learn, that's how we learn. So Epic, okay, so to review, Grow Veg, Epic Gardening, and Garden Answer. Those are the 3 gardening YouTube channels that I recommend. All right, we are ready for the main topic. Embroidery thread reviews. I am reviewing certain threads. There's probably a gajillion more brands and types of embroidery threads out there, but these are the ones that I have personally stitched with and stitched with for quite a while. And so I think that I have enough to give you guys a proper review on these embroidery threads. First, I'm going to talk about the brands and the types of embroidery threads that I tested. I tested DMC Pearl Cotton size 8 and the DMC 6-strand floss skeins, the cotton floss. Wonderfill Pearl Egyptian Cotton size 8. Sajou floss, and it's a cotton floss made in France. Valdani hand-dyed pearl cotton in size 12. Appleton wool crewel thread. And Sullivan's 6-strand floss skeins in cotton. So now I'll go through each of these brands and I'll talk about a little bit about the products that I just listed above. So starting with DMC. DMC is considered a leader in the embroidery thread industry. It's been around since the 1800s, and today it's easily found in big box stores and online. It's manufactured in Mulhouse, France. DMC has all different types of threads, embroidery threads, and the pearl cotton ball size 8 is equivalent to a 3-ply, but it is a single thread, so it's not divisible where you can separate the strands of thread like a floss. The pearl cotton ball size 8 has approximately 87 yards, so that's a pretty good amount. Wonderfill pearl is Egyptian cotton, and I used the size 8. Wonderfill is a Canadian company, and it was started in 1988, and they manufacture all of their thread lines. They make, in addition to their cotton ball embroidery thread, they make all types of threads from size of a 3 weight to a 100 weight. One of the features Wonderfill lists on their Egyptian pearl cotton is that it is double gassed and mercerized. Most of these threads are mercerized for tensile strength, but I had to look up what double gassed meant. And it's basically a process of removing, burning off the lint from the thread, and they do it 2 times. And then that really, I think that's because it's softer than the DMC thread. It has a really nice soft feel to it, but it's still very strong, and it has a more satin finish to it versus a shiny sheen to it. And I think Wonderfill is widely known for their Decobob thread. It is an 80 weight polyester thread that a lot of English paper piecers like to use to stitch their paper piecing together. And also it has some really good quilting threads. There's a nice variegated fruity thread. It's called the Fruity line, I think. Just a bunch of other threads that I'm sure you may have some of those in your sewing room. Sajou floss is a 4-strand cotton floss. It is not color fast, and it is also made in France. This is a newer line of thread for me. I have only been using it for about 3 months now, and it's available here in the States. It's just you have to look for it in more of the specialty online shops. The Brooklyn Haberdashery used to sell it, but I just went online there. They sell a whole line of Sajou products, but I didn't see actual embroidery threads on there, so I don't know if they're just out of stock or what's going on there. My bundle of Sajou threads I ordered from Emma Jones in the UK, but she is not going to be carrying that thread anymore, so I can't give you that source. I'll see what I can find as far as where you might be able to find the Sajou threads, and it also may be in your local quilt or stitching shops. Valdani, I used a size 12 pearl cotton ball. It's 2-ply thread. It's made in Romania. Valdani North American is a Canadian-owned company in Edmonton, Canada, and they partner with Valdani in Romania. They have size 5, 8, and 12 pearl cotton ball thread. And it's hand-dyed, mercerized, and color fast. This is the only thread that I have on this review that is hand-dyed. Sullivan's floss, I use a 6-strand floss, and it is an Egyptian cotton floss. Sullivan's is an Australian company. They own Sullivan's USA, which is the distributor for North America and some exports. And guess what? It's based right here near me in Downers Grove, Illinois. Who knew? This thread is manufactured in Brisbane, Queensland, Australia. It's double mercerized, and that is supposed to add tensile strength. It has a soft sheen and is color fast. And I'll talk a little bit more about that when I get to my review part. The last one is Appleton wool crewel thread. And this is called crewel thread because crewel is wool. Regular embroidery thread is usually made from cotton or, other fibers. They'll have some metallic and cotton mixes, but crewel is always wool. Appleton is a UK-based wool thread company, and crewel wool is thicker, it's fluffy, and it's heavier than embroidery thread. It's been around for centuries. And I'll read this quote taken from the Appleton Wool website. They say, "All our wool is British, from sheep to needle. It comes from the Yorkshire wool markets, and it is also dyed and spun in Yorkshire. The furthest it travels is from Yorkshire to Buckinghamshire before being shipped to you." I thought that was very interesting and informative, and I really like this product, but I'm getting ahead of myself. So let's go ahead and get into my reviews of these threads, starting with DMC. The floss, the 6-strand floss, is what I've been using from DNC in addition to the pearl cotton ball size 8. So let's start with the 6-strand floss. I do like stitching with this floss, and it is highly available almost everywhere. It's definitely kind of like the industry leader because it's been around for a couple hundred years. I like stitching with this floss. However, the skeins become messy. Unless I wind them around floss bobbins, they're little, a lot of them are little cardboard designed for floss, and you just wrap it around that and you can stitch from there, which is a lot easier to pull the thread out than pulling it, because if you pull the wrong side of the skein, then it gets all bunched up. And similar to yarn skeins, if you knit and crochet, you usually have to like wind those in a ball before you start knitting or crocheting with those. But I do like stitching with this floss. It doesn't really tangle as easily. It has a nice sheen, a big color range, and the price point is good. So it's just a good everyday, it's a strong thread and highly available. Their pearl cotton ball size 8 is also great. That has a really nice sheen, and it has 87 yards on it on each cotton ball, which is a really good amount. And it's very strong again. It's also available in skeins, in 27-yard skeins, but I prefer the cotton balls because you don't have to wrap any yarn around anything else. You just unwrap it from the ball and it's good to go. Wonderfill. I use the size 8 pearl cotton ball. It's really nice to stitch with as well. And actually, I'm going to say all of these threads are pretty good. I don't really have a lot of negatives. There are a couple of downsides that I'll mention, but I haven't really found an inferior thread out of this bunch. Okay, so back to Wonderfill. It's got a softer feel than DMC and has a little bit of a stretch to the thread, but it's still really strong. I tried to break it with my hands and I couldn't. But the sheen is a bit more matte than DMC, and again, it's softer. So I think it's like a little bit, maybe just a little bit nicer than the DMC, and it has a nice contemporary color palette. I got mine from the Allison Glass online shop. So she had a bundle, and these are kind of like her colors, her color palette, which I love. So that's another thing that I liked about this. The downside to this thread is that there's not very many yards to the cotton ball. It's about half the amount that the DMC cotton balls are. So it's around 47 yards, maybe 45 yards versus 87 from the DMC. All right, the Saju is a floss, and it's a 4-strand cotton floss. This is one of the most luxurious silky threads in painterly colors, and it's really nice to stitch with. It really does feel like silk, and it looks like silk. It's just beautiful, and the color palette that they have is, like I said, it's very painterly. It's got those kind of pastel hues into jewel tones, and it's very nice to work with. And a lot of times I can just stitch just as it is with the 4 strands, and then other times I will use 3 or 2 strands. So this one is divisible. And when I say divisible versus like the single strand, a reason why maybe you would want to have some floss in your stash is that there are some stitches that you will put the needle up in between the strands, like the split stitch. It's like a halfway back stitch, a back stitch halfway, I don't know. But basically you do your stitch, and then when you come back up, you put your needle right in the center of the stitch you just made, and it splits the strands, and you pull your thread up through there, and then you go on to your next stitch. It creates a nice texture and almost like a braided look to your stitching. So that's one reason to use floss. Another reason is to control the thickness of the threads that you use, because sometimes you might want all 6 strands. I usually use just 3 strands in general. And then if you're doing smaller, more fine features, then you'll want a 2-strand floss for that. The other embroidery threads that are single are really nice and quick, and there is no separating them. And those come in different size widths as well. So they're a lot more convenient. And the bigger the number, the bigger the thread. The 5 is the biggest, the 8 is the medium, and the 12 is the fine weight thread of the pearl cottons. So back to Saju. It glides through fabrics really well, and it looks amazing. The downsides are price. It's pretty expensive, and it's not color fast. It's one of those notions that are not practical, but it's very beautiful. It makes me happy to stitch with it, and it's kind of the special thread in my stash. I liken it to when you use your good china versus your everyday, let's say, Target or IKEA dishes. The china is more delicate and breakable than the sturdy everyday dishes. So that's kind of what I consider this Saju thread. It really is beautiful, silky, and yeah. So it's just not something that you would stitch on the everyday item because of the expense and that it is not color fast. Valdani. This is my favorite embroidery thread for practical and aesthetic purposes. I have the size 12. It's a more fine thickness of a thread than the size 8. And it could be doubled through the needle because it is thin enough that you could probably fit like a double strand thread through it if needed. I don't really do it that often though. But this thread is so soft and it's strong, but it has a very just beautiful, delicate sheen. It's like almost like a satin or matte sheen to it. Whereas the DMC pearl cotton has a very high sheen, a little more shiny. This Valdani is gorgeous, and it is all hand dyed. When things are hand dyed, you get that uneven natural beauty to it. And I have a set of variegated Valdani threads, and uh, the transitions are just so subtle and produces really beautiful stitches. So I really highly recommend this thread. It is also very expensive. However, each cotton ball has 109 yards. That taken into consideration then makes it not as out of price range as you would think. I don't know. I factor that in. I factor the volume of how many yards do you get versus what the price is. And sometimes I'm surprised. And, it's actually sometimes the less expensive ones have the least amount of yardage. So I do like that they are very generous with the yardage. And again, I love the hand dyeing that they use. The colors are really beautiful, and uh, I just love this thread. I really do love it, and I I use it all the time. So unlike the Saju, uh, this has the practical and the beauty, aesthetic beauty to it. So I will use it anywhere and everywhere. It's just my favorite thread. Sullivan's. Sullivan's is a really great workhorse thread, and it's quality. I think that sometimes it's snubbed to DMC. However, in my experience, and I've been stitching with both DMC and Sullivan's for quite a while, the sheen is okay. I think that a difference would be in sheen and not colors. Actually, that's something that I have to point out as a strength for Sullivan's. The price point is excellent. It's a great thread for filler stitches. If you need any sort of quantities, this is a great thread to use because you're not going to break the bank with it, but it's still a nice thread to stitch with. I think it does sort of tangle, it just tangles more than DMC. It does do that, but it's still a decent thread. Oh, the one thing I wanted to say about Sullivan's is that they compete really well with DMC because Sullivan's has only been around since the early 90s. And the price point is excellent, but I like how they have all of the same colors as DMC, which DMC has over 400 colors, and they print the DMC color number with their color number on the skeins and the cotton balls. So I think that's a pretty clever thing to do. Appleton. Appleton is the only wool crewel thread that I've used, and I love, love, love it. I always use this wool crewel in embroidery projects. It gives a soft texture and a matte color to the project. It's fluffy, it's a great filler thread, and I like the dimension that it adds when it is combined with other cotton embroidery threads. So yeah, I use it a lot, and I love the story of Appleton wool and how the wool goes from sheep to needle. I love wool anything. I love wool yarn, wool fabric, crewel thread. It's just such a nice fiber, and it's a natural fiber. So Appleton crewel wool thread is really great. I have purchased it from Kristen Nicholas, and she has this in her online shop. I'm sure you can find it in other online shops. And for those of you lucky ones in the UK, it's probably everywhere around you because it's from there. And yeah, so that brings us to the end of my embroidery thread review. I mean, there wasn't a lot of drama with this. It's really just um, you basically use these threads as far as what you need from them. So if you need a workhorse, I think DMC floss and Sullivan's floss are a good way to go. If you need any sort of large quantities, if you're doing dense embroidery stitching, then you would go the way of DMC or Sullivan's. And even with their pearl cotton balls, they have a decent amount of yardage to those as well. The bottom line with this review is that there is a variety of thread types and brands out there from various different price points. They are all pretty much nice to stitch with. Some of them may tangle easier than others. And I just think that if you want quality and a good price point, DMC is tried and true, lots of colors, a good brand, and has been around for 200 years. If you want different color palette, then you could try Wonderfill. You're not going to get a ton of yardage per cotton ball. And the price is a bit more than DMC. It's kind of like your mid-range of the embroidery threads. And going farther up into the higher priced embroidery threads are the Saju and the Valdani. So if you haven't tried Valdani, I don't know how you say it, Valdani, I call it Valdani. Try it. You can buy it by the single cotton ball. You can get, the color that you use the most. Black is used for certain features and outlining maybe. I have that color, and I also have a small set of the variegated in some of the neutral colors. And I really love it. I probably will add some more to my embroidery thread collection or stash because I just really love that. I really love that thread. It is a higher price point. It is an investment, but it's one that I feel good making. So give that a try. If you have any questions, again, leave me a voicemail on the podcast blog page, DM me on Instagram, or send an email to info@makeanddecorate.com. I hope you enjoyed this episode. And the next episode, I will have a guest, Rhonda Pierce from Euro Notions, and she is going to talk all about Schmetz sewing needles. Enjoy the weekend and take some time to do something creative, sewing, gardening, cooking, whatever it is. Take that time, even if it's 15 minutes. Take it for yourself. We all need a bit of creative time. Okay, till next time. Bye-bye. If you would like a bonus episode every month, become a patron and support the Make and Decorate podcast show at my Patreon page, Make and Decorate. For extended show notes with links and photos to what we've talked about, visit my podcast blog at makeanddecorate.com. And remember to take some time for yourself to be creative. Bye-bye.